It is 2016, and welcome back to Ethnically Correct. How is everybody?
Great.
Great.
Wonderful to be here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Winter.
Happy New Year.
That's Winter White, our good friend and blogger and woman extraordinaire. And let's say hi to Tehu Smythe. How are you, Tehu Smythe?
Doing very well. Looking forward to a wonderful new year with new resolutions and new goals.
Goals. That's something that we all are faced with, whether it's personal goals. We all have to tell everybody how thinner we're going to be this year,
Right.
how much money we're going to save for retirement, even though we're still in our 30s. We also have to tell people who we're going to marry this year, even though we don't have a significant partner.
A year of decisions.
It's a year, and we have to solve world hunger all in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
And there's only 366 days this year. It is a leap year, so it's supposed to be special. So we're all supposed to find treasures in our personal lives, both on the love front and in many other respects. And I think we're all poised for that. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Absolutely.
You know what?
Hallelujah.
If I didn't believe it before, I believe it after that.
Okay, well then.
As they say, amen.
Yes. We have declared it, and we have declared it for every single person listening to this podcast. This will be a fruitful year for everyone, and we wish you the best on the journey. And we're here to be your faithful companions. All right, so this brings up the topic of expectations. And expectations have been placed on us since we were born, right? There is this expectation that we're going to be beautiful children, beautiful babies, that we're going to make our mothers proud, that we're going to make every single person around us just endeared by our very human existence. And Tehu, you brought up a really important topic, which is this idea of expectation and what it means as we mature. And so I want you to sort of lay out the topic for us because it is a very compelling area of analysis as we look at what ethnically correct responses we're going to give when people ask us, well, what does your family and society expect of you?
So the area that I really wanted to focus on in particular with this topic was the role of women and the expectations that are placed on women in our society, which I think a lot of women do find it very stressful and very challenging. And let me explain this a bit further. So women have a particular role in society, and I feel that their expectations of what they're supposed to achieve and succeed at are slightly higher than men, because they have, on one hand, the role of the mother and being a homemaker and having children, and, you know, all that comes with. On the other hand, they have the stress of being a successful businesswoman in the workplace and making things happen, or being an entrepreneur. There's a lot of pressure put on women. They're also supposed to be, gorgeous, beautiful, at the same time, intelligent. I mean, equally satisfying to their other halves. It's a very difficult standard to adhere to. And I feel that a lot of women have a lot of unhappiness and insecurities because they, quite frankly, are trying to do too much. I mean, how many things can you do at once? And a lot of women try to do everything at once, and it's actually virtually impossible. It's an impossible standard to adhere to.
I mean, that actually brings to mind that question, can women have it all? Do men ask themselves that question?
That's a very valid question.
I'm
not sure.
I mean, I don't hear men say, can I have it all? Can I have the marriage and the kids and the career? We ask ourselves that.
We do.
And it's an unfair question.
And it always seems to be some sacrifice that women have to make. So if they choose, to focus on their careers, then they're thought of in a certain way. If they also equally choose to just be a mother and be at home with children, that's viewed a certain way. It just seems like it's a catch-22. Like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. A lot of stress and pressure. And isn't it ironic, actually, I need to bring up this statistic that most of the individuals that attend therapy and are suffering from depression are women. It's not surprising, right?
No, not at all. Because I think the pressures that are on us, all the pressures that you just said, do I want to be a mother? Do I want to be a career woman? How can I do both? Looking beautiful, being aesthetically pleasing to your man. And, so all of those things, that's a pressure. And those are things that I don't think men necessarily always think of, and if they do, I don't think it's in a way of, I'm really stressed about this decision. It's not a hard stop for them.
Right.
Whereas with us, it is. So when you brought up this topic, I started to think about what kinds of pressures as an African-American woman do I feel? And, there's a huge pressure for me to identify what do I put first? Do I put my blackness first, or do I put my feminism first?
That's really interesting.
It also brought to mind everything that's going on with Bill Cosby right now.
Right.
As a woman, I feel like, throw the book at him. He needs to go to jail. He's a disgusting pervert. But as a Black woman, I feel like, gosh, this was a huge figure in the African American community,
An icon,
a
total icon for transforming the whole image of African Americans on TV.
Exactly.
In the early 80s, it was revolutionary.
Exactly. And so for me, I always feel like I have to, at some point, like, just grapple with, what do I put first? And I it's always like that, even in just dating relationships, and the choices that I make, if I'm going to date someone, do I put my sexuality first? If I want to have sex with this guy on the first date, and that's what I want to do as a woman, do I do that? Or am I going to be a respectful Black woman? Because respectful Black women don't sleep with men on the first date.
Well, all respectful women are not supposed to do that. That's another expectation that's put on us.
Yeah.
It's hard being a girl. It really is.
It is.
It's hard.
Especially
it hard
being a boy, Alex.
Well, you know what? I guess I have to temper that response by saying that, not being a straight man, I think things are slightly different in terms of expectations. But I do have to say a couple of things. Number one, I work with a lot of professional women that simultaneously put a lot of effort into being aesthetically pleasing. And not too long ago, I read a statistic that women who have children are the most sleep deprived in America. And that's because they have to add that many more hours to their operational day to make all of their objectives. So, if they have to schedule that many more appointments to go to the salon and go to the gym and go to the spa, etc. I mean, you can start enumerating, right? I mean, if I start from the head, how many hours does it take you to get your hair exactly where you want it to be? Then we go down and we look at eyebrows, right? All the waxing and lasering treatments, etc. Then you have to go to blow out. Then you have to get your makeup done. Then you have to be very fit. And if you can't work it out with weights and machines, you have to go do a fat freeze. And then you have to make sure that you get all of your products and shakes and vitamins and injections. And then I'm exhausted. And I'm making
I'm exhausted listening to you.
I'm like, who is this woman? Is this a Real Housewife? Because
right, but I mean, I know several.
Yeah.
I know several women professionally that go through this whole routine, and if you add color to your hair, that's another 2 hours, right? And all the products, etc., to make that stuff conditioned and pliable for the next shoot or whatever. So I can imagine you have to start your day at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'll get all of your meetings ready, get your kid to school, then go to the workplace, all those demands. And evermore in the workplace, people are expecting you to be a social butterfly. You're supposed to ingratiate people. You're supposed to go to happy hours. You're supposed to go to network mixers, et cetera, et cetera. And I can imagine the stress for a woman. I do not have children. I do not have any large responsibility. And sometimes by the end of the day, I'm exhausted because, as a gay man, there are also expectations of looking good and being, a professional, successful guy. And so my question to you is, at one point, do you say to the world the F word in terms of like, I'm done with these expectations because they are absolutely depleting my body and soul?
And to answer that, because I've had to ask myself that question quite a bit. And for me, at least, the answer is it all comes down to the soul. It all comes down to what feels good to my soul, what gives me energy and what depletes my energy. Because if it depletes my energy, then it's not good for me. And it can be an expectation for me to have my hair done and my nails done and, my eyebrows waxed and be a certain, size. But if all of that is not making me happy, then what is it for?
That's a really good point.
What is it really for? So
it's an exhausting treadmill and barrage of physical things that you check off a list. But if you're not anything without that list, then you're not going to be much more with it, I think. Because if the core is empty and hollow, you can do as much as you want to the exterior, but it still means that there's nothing in there.
So Tehu, let me ask you this. So, traditionally Middle Eastern women have had very thick eyebrows, right? And it's known. I know several Middle Eastern girls who go through excessive laser treatments because they're so tired of having to do the repetitive waxing. And I've seen Middle Eastern girls openly criticize and attack other girls who may not have their eyebrows in perfect shape. So how does that weigh in?
It's really interesting. Middle Eastern people are very hairy in general, as a rule. And it's just the way it is. And there is like a phobia of hair that is given to you from a very young age.
Especially for women.
Absolutely. You become like almost hair phobic, where the only hair that you're allowed to have a lot of is on the top of your head. Mm-hmm. Anywhere else, it's completely unacceptable.
Do you know, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just have this one thought. I have a friend who's Armenian, and her mother started to take her to get waxed at 13.
Yeah, that's about right.
I mean, down there.
Yeah, that's right. That's totally normal.
How traumatic is that? So, like, your period comes and then you go to the wax lady?
Right.
Yes.
Is that how it happens?
I started at like 22, and I was like, oh my God, this is like...
No, that's not uncommon. That's not uncommon.
Really?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your thought, but I just started thinking.
And what your mothers teach you is that you're an unkept woman if you aren't kind of starting with those standards, and you have to present yourself a certain way. So you kind of grow up hair phobic. Mm. You're constantly examining, and it's such an awkward, I mean, imagine it. You're already so awkward at that funny age where you're examining yourself like with a magnifying glass.
God, yeah.
And on top of that, you have this like hair growing. I mean, it's just such a bizarre, unfortunate experience to go through. But yeah, it's just kind of, you're judged by being unkept, and being unkept as a Middle Eastern woman is completely unacceptable.
And the men and the men respond aggressively if they see someone that is not. It's almost like they know based on their mothers that is the expectation.
Because they had sisters and they had mothers who were constantly, keeping themselves in check and in order and physically a particular way. But they're also shielded from it. So there isn't this open dialogue of how it gets done. It's magic. So, so there, I mean, maybe in particular some, homes, but generally as a stereotype, Middle Eastern men aren't included in those conversations. So you are presented as a lady and everything you do is a secret, and you're taught that you don't kind of share that information and you don't kind of publicize it. But the end result needs to be happening. Yeah, the end result needs to be hair free.
Wow. I start thinking about my childhood and growing up. And when you say that, I'm thinking about, well, what was told to me in terms of beauty and what it means to be a lady. And I think the things that were continuously kind of drilled into my head, not someone specifically saying it, but from what I saw. So I'm going to take my brothers and my father, because those were the men who had a huge impact on me in my life. And what I remember growing up with them is that they were singers, and a lot of girls were always interested in them. And they were so vocal after hooking up with a girl, after making out with a girl, about they had their locker talk with each other. In front of me. Because I'm their sister. I'm nothing. I'm just,
fly on the wall.
Right. And they got really graphic, and it was like there was no respect for these women. And, for me, seeing that, I think it really affected me because I thought, well, this is what all men do. They talk and they, discuss every smell, feel, look, everything with each other. And for me, that made me feel so self-conscious when I began dating. I didn't want to be that girl. I didn't want to be the one that people talked about. So I was always just really cognizant of how I came across, even if that meant that I wasn't being myself. And I think that as I've gotten older, I've kind of tried to get away from that, but it's so ingrained in me that it's really hard, and I think as Black women, we are definitely looked at to be, strong and to be, we have to kind of be strong and soft at the same time and know how to play those roles and be, a freak in the sheets and a woman in the street, like that's what we have to be. And so I've always felt like I've had to balance that. And it's not a comfortable feeling because I'm not one or the other, so.
And the complexity of it all. So I think to wrap up this topic, the question that I would ask each of you is, if given a choice between being beautiful and intelligent.
Ooh. You're going to go there?
We're going to go there. Between beautiful and intelligent, what do you think your culture would dictate as the more important aspect of the two?
Ooh, that is a tough one. We really have to choose one or the other?
Well, I think based on your experience, and maybe I'll start this. I think as a Mexican man, when I was growing up, especially at the quinceañera, which is kind of like the sweet 16 for the Hispanic culture, there was always a sense that the beautiful girl that irradiated this sheer feminine beauty and aesthetic quality was almost like the anointed one of God, right? That this virginal sort of masterpiece of the creator was something to be, that was a crowning achievement. And no one ever talked about this, ninth graders' academic achievements or any other aspect other than how pretty she was and how, as she came into the church, as she went up to the altar and presented herself to God and society, that she was beautiful. And the girls that did not measure up to that aesthetic quality that everybody pined for, they were just kind of like, oh, yeah, she's 15. She's not going to necessarily do too well because she's not pretty. That's been my experience, and I've sung many quinceañeras.
A very harsh reality.
Very harsh reality. But that's my culture. And I know it's very... I'm probably going to get hate mail for this, but that is what I've seen in terms of the value of my culture when it comes to women at this point. That might be changing, but growing up, that's still emblazoned in my mind.
I'm just struggling to answer the question because on one hand, beauty is valued for sure in Middle Eastern culture, definitely. But on the other hand, there is a certain level of intelligence that's also valued equally. Most of NASA, I think 67% of NASA are Iranians at the moment working.
Really?
Yes. People don't know that. It's a very intelligent breed of people, the Persian people are. And people don't know that. But, I can't say that is that more important than the beauty. I think they're both equally valued. I just feel very privileged because my mother is an extremely elegant woman. She's beautiful. She's also very charismatic. So as a role model, and she's intelligent too. She's a businesswoman. So as a role model, I was able to get all three of those kind of parts of the pie and kind of admire that and kind of hope to aspire to it. But if you didn't get that and you only got one or the other, I just wonder how that would affect one going through life. If you never saw the beauty, or if you only saw the intelligence or just the beauty and not the intelligence, I don't think it's enough. You really need both.
I think in thinking about what's more important in African American culture, I'd say it's not necessarily, it is looks, but beauty is not the epitome. It's really a couple of characteristics. So I think, lighter skinned women have it a little bit easier. I think if your hair is less kinky, you have it a little bit easier. I think if you have a big ass, you have it a little bit easier. So I think there are just specific characteristics. I don't think it's just, you can be unattractive and be lighter skinned and you will still get a man because certain men just associate lighter skin with being beautiful.
Right. So it's almost like a mold. There's a
Right.
mold that you have to fit into, and that recipe has to be out there. And when everything is in the pot and everybody you stir, then if that comes out, then it's at least acceptable.
Exactly.
No matter the granular specifics.
Right.
Well, this has been a very enlightening conversation. Thank you for joining us in this conversation. And so we want you to tell us what you think. Is it a question of beauty versus intelligence? What were your expectations growing up as a little child when you looked up to your parents? And what did they transmit through that eyesight in terms of what you were to become as an adult? We want you to join this conversation on Facebook. Please like our page at Ethnically Correct, and on Twitter we're at Ethnic Correct. So thank you for joining us for topic 1. Topic 2 is next.
Ad break now, huh?
We haven't, yes.
We'll have to create an ad.
All right, so on to topic number 2. That was a great discussion on topic number 1, and we really want to hear from you on Facebook and Twitter, so please do send your comments to Ethnically Correct and Ethnic Correct. So the next topic has to do with the new year always inspires us to think about growth. We talked about expectations, but we're also inspired to look at ourselves in the year that just concluded and how we're going to morph this year, how we're going to evolve as human beings. And part of that includes our wishes for the collective we. So how do we want our society to grow and mature? And in that respect, when it comes to looking at our own ethnic groups, what is it that if we had the opportunity to do a wish list for our folks, if we were like Paul the Apostle, and if we were to send a letter to our people, like, get it together, what would what would the tone of that letter be? So, Winter, you were the one that espoused this topic, so bring us home.
So I just wanted to think, in this new year, like you said, what kind of, since we always think about change and growth and all of that, how as a people or as a culture, American culture, how would you like America to grow and how they see ethnicity? And one of the big things for me when I thought about this was, as a Black woman, I would love for people to not think of me as a monolith. I am not specifically one person, one characteristic. I grew up in the hoods of Long Beach, on the east side of Long Beach. That doesn't mean that I'm ghetto. I do know the ghetto. I am comfortable in the ghetto. I can get ghetto. But that doesn't mean that, I'm not classy. There's so many different parts of myself. And I'd hope that even if I know how to snap my neck and roll my eyes and all of that, you would also understand that I also know how to be quiet, and I also know how to be calm, and I'm, I'm soft. So that's one of the ways that I wish society kind of would understand ethnicity. Not everyone fits into this mold. Of course, there are prejudices out there, and people prejudge because certain things, are consistent in our culture. But for you to be a more well-rounded person and accept people and empathize, you have to understand that no one is just one thing. And I'd love for people to not just think that as a notion, but be open to understanding all sides of all people.
I couldn't agree with you more, Winter, and thank you for bringing that up. I'm a huge advocate of multiculturalism and diversity. I feel like that's what makes our world a unique, special place. For me, what I would like to see from my people is that the entire region of the Middle East is completely in disarray and torn because it can't tolerate differences in religion, differences in just difference. It's a very the lack of tolerance is what makes the entire area a war-stricken zone, a war zone totally at the moment. Following the revolution in 1979, a lot of Iranian people fled the country, and the Iranians used to be proud to call themselves that, Iranians. But what happened was, with the overthrow of the government and the Islamic Republic of it became the Islamic Republic of Iran, and this very kind of fundamentalist government took over. A lot of Iranian people were no longer associating their country with the sense of pride that it once had. And slowly, sometimes I'm sure you've heard that people refer to themselves as Persians rather than Iranians. There's a very interesting dichotomy because of that. Essentially, it's the same people, but people, when they left Iran, they didn't want to call themselves Iranians anymore because they thought that associated them with this new government and, the Islamic Republic of Iran, which they didn't kind of accept because the government was put into power against a lot of people's wishes. So they decided that they would like to call themselves as an entire race a different name, and Persians, because that was associated with the Persian Empire and a wonderful, luxurious time of wealth and prosperity and just great times. So because of that association, they almost changed their names to be then known as Persian people because that had a better connotation to it.
I never knew that.
I never knew that either.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here like, I should say I never knew that, but maybe
A lot of
everybody did know
people,
that.
a lot of people don't know. I think a lot of Persians or Iranian people don't know that. So, just being able to tolerate differences, at the moment we have a lot of problems in the U.S. because of Islam. A lot of people don't understand it. They don't know what it's about, but they're jumping to conclusions, yet they haven't done the research, and there's a lot of ignorance out there. Within the branch of Islam, you have two branches. There's Shia and there's Sunni. And they actually, again, they don't tolerate differences. And, there's been wars over these differences in religion. Through religion, through so many years, all different types of religion, there's been wars all around the world, crusades, etc. But I would just really hope that the tolerating differences, whether it's in the U.S. or whether it's over international borders, becomes a real, a real phenomenon, and people take it seriously because it's destroying us as a human race.
And can I just say one thing before you start, Alex? I just want to say what brought something that came to mind when you were saying that is fear. Mm-hmm. I would love for people to be less afraid.
Yes, there's a lot of fear.
There's so much fear. It's all rooted in fear,
Massive fear. You think our extraordinary leaders, people that we kind of, hold in really high regard, I guess JFK, Margaret Thatcher, the Queen, any leader that's held to kind of a high standard measure were actually, they had a few characteristics. One, they were very charismatic. Two, essentially, they weren't afraid. Even if they made the wrong decisions, even if they knew what they were doing wasn't the best interest of the country, they took a chance. They did something different. They didn't worry. Margaret Thatcher was a very stern woman. She was not afraid. A lot of people didn't like her, her rulings and her way of running the government, running the country. But she wasn't afraid to take a chance to do something different. And people don't want to do that. They don't want to be unpopular.
Yeah.
They want to go down almost as a legacy.
Right.
Well, that's such a great segue into my whole commentary, and I'm going to jump on the soapbox, so be ready. So what would I like America not to do anymore in terms of its response to Latino folks? So number one is don't fear us, right? There's this whole discourse propelled by people like Donald Trump to basically categorize every Latino person that has come here in one way, shape, or form as being either one of the other in terms of being a criminal, a rapist, people that have come to this country to just basically be leeches, etc. And, I have to say, I'm sure there are people out there that have come to this country and are criminals, and they have committed atrocious crimes. But for the most part, the folks that I grew up with, the Latino men and women who are hardworking individuals, they have come here to do exactly that, to be prolific members of society, to basically first help their families back home, and then for several generations help the families here build awesome families and empires. And so, I'm sure all of us have been to restaurants here in Los Angeles, and invariably you go into even the most luxurious restaurants, and the folks that are in the kitchen and really supporting the business are of Latino descent. So even there, you can easily see that the myth is dispelled. And, I happen to be very proud of the fact that my parents were working class and that they worked 16 hours a day just to make sure that they could buy their first home, so that the next generation, didn't have to go through the ardor and the plight of being working class. They wanted me to have a university education. They wanted me to succeed in life and have an office job. And, everybody that touches my hands will tell you that I have the smoothest hands that anyone has ever touched, because I've never worked a hard day in my life. And I am very grateful to my parents because they sacrificed a lot so that I could be in this privileged position. Conversely, what I would like my people to do is to not give fodder to people like Donald Trump. So,
yes,
Latino folks out there, listen carefully. Number one, do not play loud music after 10 p.m. I don't care where you are. Your music is loud, it's obnoxious, and it's intrusive. So shut it down. It's after 10 o'clock. If you want a loud party, go to a hall. Number two, your trash needs to stay in your canister, or if you're going to put something out curbside, put it out Sunday after 10 p.m. And before you put it out there, call the city so that it's picked up. We don't want trash on the street. Number three, get your kids in check. Get your kids in check. Do not let them run rampant in public places. Children are to be seen and not heard. Get them in check. If they're at a restaurant and they start crying, find mechanisms of shutting that down. It is not pretty. I have paid a lot of money to be sitting here and eating this food. I do not want to hear your child. I don't want to go to the bank and have somebody crawl up on me because your kids are infectious little critters. They must be kept at bay. Okay? And fourth, it's like, seriously, with all these cars and the mishigosh and these external manifestations of pride, God bless you, but you are in another country and people don't necessarily want to hear that you have all this extra pride for your native land. I love Mexico. Tayu can attest.
Amazing country.
I've taken her to Mexico City. I have great pride, and I will go to that country every year. But when I'm in America, I'm going to have pride for this country, which has done a lot for my family and for me. There you go. That's all I have to say.
Well, since you read your people, I'm about to read my people.
Okay.
I only have a couple things though. Black people, don't send me hate mail. Number one, let's stop asking or expecting white people to understand our plight. They will not understand our plight. They are not Black. They can at the most empathize, but they don't get it. And what we have to stop doing is thinking that if they get it, somehow that validates our plight. We don't need them to validate it. We know it. We know that the cops pull us over and it's not fair and it's not right. I don't need to continue to put things on social media and, be angry about it. I need to just take action and do what I can do as a United States citizen to make that stop in whatever way I can. We get so caught up in making sure people know that racism is happening that we don't fight racism like we should, which is by, coming together and back in the 70s, in the 60s, we had our own neighborhoods, and we met and we did all of these things without thinking about what white America thought about us. And I just think we have to get to that point. Black people, I think that we have to be a lot more sensitive to Black women. I think that, Black men are always put to the forefront when things happen that are negative in our society. And I think a lot of times we forget about what Black women go through. And I think Black men and Black women, we need to kind of stop fighting each other and come to some type of understanding and not feel like we are against one another. I feel like there's a lot, and I hope I'm being clear with that. I think that there's a lot of anger towards each other. And I think that for whatever that reason is, I think we need to be a little bit more empathetic towards each other, a lot more loving towards each other, whether a Black man wants to be with a Black woman in a relationship or not, whether he thinks we're beautiful or not. There's still a respect that I think needs to happen between the genders.
Respect is very important. A lot of things come from respect.
Right. So that's my 2 cents.
I just want to add, at the moment, there's a lot going on out there with how Middle Eastern people are being viewed in the media, and particularly with the religion of Islam at the moment. So I just want to say a very broad statement. So stereotypes exist in every culture. We know it well. If you know what the stereotype is of your culture, try and be a little bit more proactive and don't completely live up to your stereotype every single day of your life. And the other thing I really wanted to add was that, at the moment, just because you don't understand it, it's novel to you, it's foreign to you, you've never heard it, you've never experienced it, doesn't mean you should fear it, and it's not going to necessarily kill you. It actually might teach you something. So this is going to sound really funny, but not every Middle Eastern person belongs to a terrorist group and is actively involved with ISIS, nor do they support it, nor do they adhere necessarily to the religion of Islam. Every Middle Eastern person is not Muslim. It's just shocking to me that people don't understand the differences, but yet they fear it. You hear it, on the news broadcast. There's so much fear of those foreign people. They're so different from us. We have 2 arms, 2 legs, like the rest of you. Actually, you might, enjoy our food, our customs, our culture. We're very hospitable, but you would never know that because you're never going to talk to us. Because as far as you're concerned, we're up to something dodgy.
Right.
It's outrageous. How on earth will you ever grow as a person if you never mix with anything different than what you are?
Yeah. And I think, if somebody is dressed fabulously from head to toe, chances are, as Joan Rivers famously said, that they're not going to put a bomb in your face. So, that should be definitely a litmus test.
God bless Joan
That's
Rivers.
a part of the gay man's Bible. If you're dressed fabulously, you're not going to put a bomb in my
You're not going
face.
to blow me up.
Yeah.
Yes. But of
Rest
course,
in peace, Joan.
rest in peace, and thank you
Amazing
for
woman.
years of wisdom, that great Jewish
Another
woman.
great woman who didn't fear anything or what anybody thought.
Exactly.
How great was she?
Yeah.
Well, we've given a lot of food for thought in this episode. Thank you all for being courageous. We really went there. We lambasted people. We edified them, and then we encouraged everybody to be better, all in the same space of time. And that's what we do because we're ethically correct. And being ethically correct means that we're being real and honest about our realities.
Be the best of your version.
Be the best of
Be
your
the best
version.
you can be.
And live in honesty. Please tell us what you think. Read us. We need it sometimes at Facebook, Ethnically Correct, and on Twitter at Ethnic Correct. For the fabulous women that support this program, Winter White and Tehu Smythe. And for our outstanding executive producer, Dan Howes, I'm
Yes.
Alex from the city of Santa Monica. I'm Alex Venegas, and we hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.